Ho ho ho! It's been nearly 3 weeks since Christmas, but I finally got my Christmas themed video out, and you sure wouldn't know it's not Christmas anymore walking around my neighborhood. Very few people have taken down their lights around here. Well, here it is, a movie poster collage containing most all of the Christmas classics, and maybe a couple you haven't considered before. Please be sure to stick around to the end of the video where I'll show you the first version of this image. It's pretty different and pretty good in its own right, if I do say so. Though I think this version is far closer to what I originally had in mind. You can let me know what you think in the comments. And as usual, please like and subscribe and give me a follow over on Instagram at DamageWork. Okay, here we go. After spending several hours searching Google and Yandex for suitable images to use, I began the tedious process of masking each one and deciding on placement. This can take extra long because I'll inevitably decide one or another image of a character doesn't work in this composition and have to try a different one. I knew I wanted Krampus though, from the 2015 Christmas horror comedy movie, Krampus, at the very top. Mainly because of the way he has his hand extended out, like he's going to be puppet mastering all the other characters. After all, he is kind of the original Santa Claus. I masked away the background, then had to rebuild the tops of his horns by hand since I couldn't find any version of this image or any other with him that had the horns at this angle uncropped. Then, copy and pasted his hand and shoulder over to the other side where it was cropped. I also reshaped the right side so there was a little more symmetry and space between his hands. Now, I wanted the hands to be able to cover over a couple of characters that I'll put under them, so I had to cut them out onto a separate layer and clone them out from the character first. Then noticed his shoulders were a little too symmetrical, so I just used Liquify to mismatch them a little. Then dropped the hands layer back in and repositioned them up a little higher than they were originally. Now, since Home Alone is my favorite Christmas movie, I'm going to put Little Kevin McCallister right here in the center. Next to him I'll put Ralphie from A Christmas Story, one of the earliest Christmas movies I can recall seeing, and one I watched a lot growing up. Then on the other side, Frank Cross from Scrooged, an absolutely underrated classic in my opinion. Now I had to rebuild the top of his hat, and I did that just by cloning it up a little higher, and also extended his suit down a little further by cloning and painting. Another favorite of mine is Willie from Bad Santa. Then John McClane from the perennially debated Die Hard. Is it a Christmas movie or not? I've never thought of it as one, but I have no problem seeing how people would consider it one. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments if you think it's one or not. I could use the engagement. I did have to rebuild his elbow here where it was cropped off, just more cloning and painting. Next is Clark Griswold from Christmas Vacation, a movie I like, but not as much as other people I think. I like the first two Vacation movies a lot though. I do like his pose in this one, but I want a different facial expression. I liked his expression in this image, so I just copied, pasted, and blended it in. Then I added in Marcus, Willie's sidekick / accomplice in Bad Santa. Again, having to rebuild the top of his hat from scratch with cloning and painting. Now Arnold in Jingle All the Way. Now I have to admit, I haven't seen this movie, and from everything I've heard it's really not that great, but I know a lot of people have a fondness for it as a Christmas movie. After masking, I just slightly darkened the highlight on his jacket. Oh, and fun fact, I actually saw the set of this movie while it was being filmed during a studio backlot tour on a family trip to one of those places that does backlot tours. Don't remember exactly. It was either MGM or Universal, I assume. Anyway, so I had to add in Carl's corpse from Die Hard. It's just too classic a scene.
Now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho.
Now, a movie I've only seen parts of, The Santa Claus. They made like 3 of these movies and recently a streaming series, so people must like it. I had to extend his Santa suit too. By the way, I haven't said, but in case it isn't obvious to you, I'm extending outfits in instances where it ended up cutting off where you could see, like where another character wasn't covering up where the crop was. Oh, and I also darkened the highlight on this side of his hair. Next, I added Buddy the Elf from Elf. This movie, I must say, is incredibly overrated in my opinion. I saw it once when it first came out and just didn't understand the appeal. Maybe I was too old and just wasn't the target audience. In any case, it's a classic to a lot of people, so in it goes. Then, The Grinch from the 2000 live-action version with Jim Carrey. I don't think anyone liked this movie when it came out, but it's really grown on people, including myself, over the years for just how absurdly strange it is. I extended the bottom of him a little as well. I felt that the image of Arnold from Jingle All the Way needed a little something more to identify what movie it was from, so I added in this candy cane from another scene in the film, masked it out, then cleaned it up. Now I wanted to use this image of Ernest from Ernest Saves Christmas, another personal favorite of mine since I was a kid, but I could only find it in black and white. I didn't want to spend the time trying to color it by hand, and the colorizing neural filter in Photoshop is still pretty much garbage. The AI coloring software that MyHeritage uses is by far and away the best colorizing software out there. You can colorize a few images for free to demo it when you sign up, so I did that and voila. It's not 100% perfect, but I was able to easily fix it from here. And it ended up not being totally necessary, but I did go in and fix the individual tinsels in the tree that didn't get masked very well. Next up is The Conductor from the Polar Express, another movie no one really liked when it came out, but I think the kids who were really young when it came out are now grown and have nostalgia for it, and now it's on a lot of lists of Christmas classics. Of course, I had to add in the Wet Bandits / Sticky Bandits from the Home Alone movies, starting with Harry. Had to extend his coat down a bit. Then Marv. I used a curly hair brush to paint in some curly hair here where it's cropped off. Now, I've never heard of anyone considering Friday After Next, the 2002 third movie in the Friday series, as a Christmas movie, but to me it totally is. It's one of my favorites, in fact, not just of Christmas movies, but it's my favorite in the Friday series. I like the position of Day Day in this image, but not his face, obviously, so I replaced it with another image. Then brought in Craig. So tell me, is Edward Scissorhands more of a Christmas movie or a Halloween movie to you? I think it works as either, especially this scene. Unfortunately, this is how the scene is cropped, with half the house and the holiday sign cropped. But with some patience and determination, I was able to recreate the rest of the sign and extend the house. Do you guys remember Jack Frost, the 1998 family Christmas movie starring Michael Keaton and Kelly Preston, where Keaton's character dies and comes back to life as a snowman to be with his son? Well, this character isn't from that movie. He's from the other Jack Frost, the 1997 film about a serial killer who comes back to life as a snowman to get revenge, and has non-consensual relations with a pre-famed Shannon Elizabeth 2 years before American Pie would come out.
Looks like Christmas came a little early this year.
This, well, unfortunately, was the best image I could find of the killer snowman since it isn't a very well-known movie, so I had to do some work to him. I flipped him horizontally, which made the stop sign backwards, so the first thing I had to do was flip that around. Then add another ball of snow to make his lower half by copy and pasting the top part and cloning out the scarf. I also wanted to somehow incorporate the iconic leg lamp from A Christmas Story, so I thought I could maybe put it in this window of the house. There, yeah, that works. Another Christmas horror movie that a lot of people maybe don't think of, but is actually better than you'd expect, is Silent Night, Deadly Night. I've only seen the first one, but did you know there's actually 5 of these? I love the image they used for the poster, so I just used that. And warped the snow to make it look like a mound or the point of a roof. Then I put in Jack Skellington from Nightmare Before Christmas, another Tim Burton movie that works for Christmas or Halloween. After he was masked, I went in and fixed the hair strands on the edge of his beard. Also ended up being unnecessary, but whatever. Now, Gremlins is another movie people debate about as to whether or not it should be considered a Christmas movie. I don't really have any skin in that game. I've only seen the first Gremlins once or twice. I was always a fan of the sequel, and I used to watch that one all the time. Where do you all come in on that debate? Again, please comment, engage. Algorithms. The last character I added was the Santa Claus robber from Friday After Next. I again did this because I felt that just showing Craig and Day Day in their security guard uniforms wasn't really enough to clue anyone in into what movie they were from. Okay, characters are in place, now to clean up some of the edges and work on the shape. I'm going for a Christmas tree shape. We'll actually be putting a tree in the image in a minute. I started by just softening this little corner here. Then masked away part of Clark's arm so we could see the outline of Buddy's face. Then masked away Buddy's shoulder so it wasn't just awkwardly sticking out there. Then masked away Willie's arm and shoulders so we see Marcus's outline better. Then soften this little bit of Marcus. And the bottom part of Grinch. I found a pretty good image of a Christmas tree on a clean white background to make it easier to mask. I took out the presents at the bottom of the tree here and the top part of the tree because I felt the star was just too big and distracting. I shrunk it down a little bit and put it back in. For the background, I liked the gradient from white to dark blue of this image, but not the snowflakes so much. We'll paint in our own snow later towards the end. So I used Gaussian blur to blur it until you don't see the flakes anymore. I masked away the edges of the blue sky layer to show the black layer underneath it and give it a vignette. Then brought in this image of a sunset or sunrise, I don't know, whichever it is, I just like the clouds and the colors. I put it on overlay blending mode and on a separate layer painted a big soft pinkish dot and put that on a color blending mode. Now I need to balance all the image's colors and brightness, as well as bring out their details. The easiest way to do this is with the camera raw filter. I'm going to start at the top with Krampus and work my way down. I like the cooler blue and reddish tones he has going on, so I'll just try and match everybody else with him. So first I just brought out some of his details. Then brought out what I could of Ralphie. Didn't need to do much to his color, he was already blue and reddish. Then Kevin. I didn't change his color in camera raw because it was changing his sweater color too much, so I'll worry about that later if I need to. Then Frank, Clark, John, and so on. I felt the Grinch's arm here was throwing off the balance a little bit, so I just warped it. That's a little better. Continuing on with the camera raw filter. Now that everything's looking a little more even, I'll go around to each character and darken them a little with a levels adjustment. I won't bore you and show me doing each individually, just here's the after. Now darkening them down kind of flattened them and removed their dimension, so I went back around to each one and clipped a lighten curves adjustment to them and used blend if to brighten up the highlights. Because the sky is pink and reddish, I wanted to add that color to the edges of the characters. So I just clipped a solid color adjustment set to soft light to each character and used blend if and a mask to add it to adjust the edges. I also felt like there needed to be a shadow separating Harry and Marv here. Okay, looking good. Now to add more separation between the characters with some red haze. I just made a layer below each character and painted on it with a smoky brush with the same color used for the reddish color on the character edges. Whoops, forgot to add a shadow behind the candy cane. There we go. Then I added a glow to the lamp in the window using a yellowish solid color on linear dodge add. Next, I added more dimension to the characters by going around and dodging and burning. Then I painted red highlights around edges of the characters and added some glows here and there where I thought it needed a little something. And did the same thing to the Christmas tree. I dropped in this lens flare image and set it to the screen blending mode. I felt there was so much going on in this image it was just hard to find a focal point, so this helps with that, I think. Next, I accentuated all the Christmas lights on the house and the tree by just setting a blank layer on linear dodge add and painting over the lights with a brush of the light's color. And for the first bit of color grading, I used a couple of custom actions and a color lookup. This helped tie all the colors together, I think. Now, since I've got everything solidly in place and don't plan to change anything I've done thus far, I can now smudge paint. And you don't want to do this before you're sure because it's a point of no return. You'll make a stamp visible layer of everything and smudge paint atop that, so there's really no easy way to go back. Alright, I always love how this looks. Now let's add some snow, starting with the background. I used a snow brush I have and painted some smaller snow in the distance, set it to overlay, masked it out of the areas you wouldn't see, like in front of the tree and the bright areas, then used Gaussian blur to blur it some. Then painted some foreground snow with a different snow brush. Put it on overlay as well, changed the color slightly since it'd be catching the light of the lens flare, and masked away some of the more distracting flakes. Nearing the end now, I brought in this dust image and set it to screen blending mode, made the color more greenish just for contrast, and masked it just around the lens flare. I used the glowing edge filter to get some dark lines around some areas just to kind of give it a more hand-drawn look. Did a little more color grading with a couple more color lookups. I felt the red was a bit too saturated around the center, so I used a curves adjustment to target just the reds and desaturated them slightly. And that's it. So here's that other version. I didn't spend as much time on it as I did the other, and I was able to tell fairly early it wasn't going the way I had hoped. Just too busy, too much going on. I also gotta say I might prefer this image of Kevin from Home Alone. It's more iconic. The one that I ended up using reminds me of that version of the DVD cover they used for the Page Master when they were trying to trick grandmas into buying it for the grandkids instead of Harry Potter. Anyway, stay tuned for the next video coming real soon. I've already finished the image, so I just have to edit the video. It's one more poster. I'll save revealing the theme until the video comes out, but it's pretty awesome. See you then.